Welcome to the Week 1 NFL injury report for the upcoming 2025 season. And let me tell you, when I was thinking about putting this video together and talking about this today here with you guys, I was ecstatic. Football season's back. College football season officially started last weekend, and finally we're getting into the best time of the year. It's cooled down a little bit, fall's on the way, apple cider, bonfires, and football, baby. It's finally time. And then, literally 3 hours ago, and I know I'm going to start with the Jets, but I just got to say, 3 hours ago, one of the Jets' best offensive linemen, Elijah Vera-Tucker, has a serious upper arm injury and is expected to miss significant time. It might require surgery. So, yeah, you know what? That put a little bit of a damper on things because just like every year, every NFL fan goes in with a little bit of excitement, a little bit of hope, no matter how bad you're expected to be. You know, it's like, yeah, you know what? We're probably not going to win a lot of games, but hey, I get to watch football. Maybe I have a fantasy team. It could still be exciting. You never know what might happen. And then this just takes the wind out of your sails. So with that being said, I guess we're kind of already into it. Elijah Vera-Tucker is going to most likely miss a significant amount of time. He's getting a second opinion, but for a Jets offense that is expected to be a heavy pound the ground running offense with Fields, Braylon Allen, and Breece Hall, that outlook just got a little bit shakier. So if you have any of them on your fantasy team, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, make sure you pay attention to how the Jets shuffle that offensive line against a tough matchup against TJ Watt and Highsmith there in Pittsburgh this week. But without further ado, that's enough about my current misery. Let's talk about the rest of the league. We got a ton of wide receivers here that thankfully most are expected to play, but let's get into the details here. So first and foremost, staying in that AFC East division, Tyreek Hill suffered an oblique injury a couple of weeks ago, missed a couple of weeks of practice. He was able to practice on Monday. Unclear if it was a full participation or not, but most likely he will be playing week 1 on Sunday, which is a huge get for that Miami offense. Derek Harmon, I mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line there earlier. He is unfortunately out with a MCL sprain that he suffered a couple of weeks ago. He's expected week to week. He is the only Pittsburgh Steeler who has been ruled out definitively so far. It is unclear of whether or not Cameron Hayward, who's not injured but is dealing with a contract situation, whether or not he will play. He's expected to, but it's still a little shaky right now. Now, for Philly fans out there, opening up the season against Dallas, fantastic game, I might add. Nice job, NFL schedulers. Previously, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith were both on the injury report through training camp with a hamstring and groin injury, respectively. They are both off of the injury report this week and are not listed going into the game against Dallas tomorrow. Malik Neighbors, staying now in the NFC East division, has been dealing with a toe, shoulder, or back injury over the past couple of weeks. That toe injury has actually been around since college, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that here. It's unclear what it actually is, but it's most likely turf toe, is what it seems like, and that can be a pretty fickle thing. So we're going to touch on that in a little bit, just put a pin in it for now. Marquise Brown, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, is a full participant after being on the injury report with an ankle injury for the past couple of weeks through training camp, which is a huge thing for Patrick Mahomes in that offense as they're looking for a receiver to kind of step up and take the bulk workload for a lot of those targets between him, Xavier Worthy, and then they traded Sky Moore, who's no longer with the team. So he'll have a chance to step up this week as a stretch the field kind of option for Patrick Mahomes in that Kansas City offense. Brandon Ayuk, who tore his ACL and MCL last year in week 7, I believe, for the 49ers, he is on the PUP list currently, so it means he has to miss at least the first 4 games. I'd expect to see him make his 2025 debut somewhere in mid-October. Before he can even get on the field, obviously he has to ramp up a little bit. Once he's cleared to practice, they'll activate him off the PUP list, and he'll be able to start to practice in a limited participation and then slowly build up to be able to play. But for now, stash him on the bench if he's on your fantasy team, and then look around that mid-October timeline to see where his progression is at. Chris Godwin, who suffered a pretty horrible ankle injury actually, I think kind of close to that week 7 time frame as well. He was actually activated off the PUP list earlier this week, which is really, really interesting because initially they weren't expecting him to be back until October. Now, it's most likely that he still won't make his debut until October in an actual NFL game. However, this gives the Buccaneers the option to possibly get him back sooner. But he's been cleared to practice. He's going to practice with the team, most likely in a limited participation activity at first, and then slowly building up with the team drills and so on and so forth. But the fact that they did not put him on the PUP list is a really good sign for his recovery. In the meantime, if you have Godwin on your fantasy team, I'd look to Emeka Egbuka, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, so if I am, I apologize. Because, you know, Emeka Egbuka watches this podcast. I don't know if you knew that, but he's really big into it. So I'd look for him to get a lion's share of the workload while Godwin is out, however long that may be. Now, coming back to Malik Neighbors, when we're talking about turf toe, it's a sprain of the ligaments and sometimes a strain of those tendons surrounding your first MTP or metatarsophalangeal joint. And what that joint is, it's where that phalangeal bone, that first one, meets your metatarsal on your big toe. And the reason why this turf toe typically occurs is that it happens more often on artificial turf than grass, but it's where you're cutting and pushing off of that foot in that big toe really, really explosively. So what ends up happening is you hyperextend. So like if this was my foot, I'm gonna hyperextend my big toe, and it ends up stressing all of the your plantar plate, which is a ligament, all the other ligaments of that big toe. And ultimately, every time you do that, it irritates it a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more. The reason why it happens a little bit more frequently on turf than grass is because turf doesn't have the same give that grass will. For example, if you like plant your foot and then try to push off, sometimes that grass moves, because it rips out of the dirt, and that can cause its own problems. However, for turf, that's not going to happen. So essentially, it is a competition between that athlete's foot and big toe and the earth. And personally, I'm going to take the earth 100% of the time. So that's how those ligaments get sprained, and that's ultimately what turf toe is. The tough thing with this injury is that it's really easy to continue to re-aggravate. Now, if Neighbors has been dealing with this since college, he likely has some way to manage it. However, he has been on the injury report a couple of times, and obviously last year was his first year, so it's a very small sample size, but it's something to pay attention to because yes, he's absolutely dynamic when he's out there, but you don't want to take the risk of him not being on the field and now you're stuck without probably your first round, if not early second round pick. But that is how turf toe works. That is week 1's injury report. Let me know in the comments if there's anyone else that you have questions about or something that you're looking forward to this season, because we finally have meaningful football again, folks, and we will not have a Sunday without NFL football until 2026, and that is a beautiful sentence. As always, like, comment, subscribe to the channel so that you can keep up with all of the injury reports and make sure that your fantasy football and team is in the best shape possible. And if you have a friend that's a Saints fan or a Jets fan, be a little bit nicer to them over the next couple of weeks, because they might have hope, but they should probably tone it down a little bit. Don't tell them that, but be there for them right around week 2, week 3 when they, the reality sets in. But I'll see you guys in the next one for the week 2 injury report.